Hey y'all, my name is Wyatt. I started my career in workforce development with the state of Kentucky in 2010. That experience ignited a deep passion for manufacturing within me. I started this show hoping to raise more awareness around the bright outlook manufacturing careers have. Join me as I sit down with some of the manufacturing industry's most successful changemakers and learn how they're partnering people with technology. It's time to give people more meaningful work. This is Workforce 4.0. Episode of Workforce 4.0. I am so excited to have Hendrik Stoltz with us today. Hendrik is the CEO of Automated Industrial Robotics, and we have quite the conversation lined up for you all listening in. But Hendrik, for those that maybe are not as familiar with Automated Industrial Robotics, or AIR, right, as your logo suggests there, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and about the really cool applications that you all are into?
Yeah, thank you very much, and really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today. I think maybe by starting by giving a little bit of a background on myself. I am South African born and raised, and I had a very interesting journey going from finishing my career there as a mechanical, or starting my career as a mechanical engineer, but been in engineering management throughout my life. Went to Europe for a stint there, worked there for 12 years within a multinational business, and then eventually immigrated to the USA in 2008, where I kind of eventually made my way out of packaging into the automotive world. I started with a company here called Totally Automated Systems in 2017 as their COO, and I would say was instrumental in building the culture there and some transformational change within the organization, also technologically. Positioning ourselves in a way where Automated Industrial Robotics, or AIR, which is a private equity sponsored organization, acquired us in late 2023. And we focus on custom automation. So we manufacture basically automation equipment fairly heavily focused on the automotive industry, but also doing work in other industries. So any customer requirement where they want to look at implementing automation to do the normal things, right? Everybody is struggling with resources. Implementing automation is a key strategic aspect for a lot of our customer base.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, there's associated kind of changes and so on with that as well. So AIR today has acquired multiple businesses, two in Ireland, one in the UK, which are focusing on other industry verticals such as medtech and consumer goods and so on. And with the latest acquisition as well, that's going a lot more into higher tech verticals as well. So the business is expanding. The intention behind the thesis is to develop or to put companies together that has a similar culture is kind of the key aspect and driver, but also with transferable skills across organizations. And I think that's kind of a very key thing, or has been a key thing, I think, in our acquisition and also the integration process that we are engaged in.
That is really interesting. And I definitely want to get into more of that conversation around acquisitions and integrations for businesses, because I think that is such a crucial thing to understand, part of having a business and being in this world. I definitely want to, get more into that conversation with you. But Hendrik, before we get started with all of that fun stuff, I've got to give you the honorable Workforce 4.0 welcome. And I'm going to know, are you a karaoke fan?
I am a fan of listening to other people doing it, but not necessarily doing it.
Right.
So as long as you don't ask me to sing, I can sort of lean into the subject for a second there.
Absolutely. Well, no, singing is not mandatory on this podcast. But if we were to go out to listen to some karaoke or do some karaoke, what song are you hoping gets played? What is your go-to karaoke song?
Well, I can
I
tell
guess.
you, at least for me, a funny story because traveling in Japan, there's, of
Ah,
course, a karaoke bar is like a mandatory situation, right? So we would
right.
go out we would go out there, and then I would say the House of the Rising Sun has, had its brunt of me trying, giving that a whirl. And I've always had a standing applause, but that's just the Japanese being cordial and very kind, I think. It's got nothing to do with
Yeah.
any performance related metrics on that one.
Oh, well, I love that. So, that's one of my favorite all-time old songs. This House of the Rising Sun. I don't know what it is. It's just a really good one, right?
It is very nice.
It is a great one. Yeah, well, whether they were being cordial or not, I'm sure that you did a fantastic job. It is karaoke, so I don't think there's, the bar to succeed there is not super. It's not the
Yeah,
highest,
I
right?
agree. Yeah, it's easy.
Well, that's amazing. So yeah, so maybe at an event sometime we'll have to revisit that idea. But I guess for me, it was really an honor for me to have you on the show because I know that you're a big part of the A3 organization. And it's always great to talk to somebody with your level of expertise and experience. I think my listeners get a huge value out of it just because, who doesn't want to chase those executive level dreams,
Yeah.
right? And somebody with your experience that obviously is a CEO of this robotics company, and then you've managed acquisitions and you're playing at a global level is really exciting. What has your experience though been like in that process, like of climbing this ladder in your career?
I think it's got multiple aspects to it, right? So of course the technology thing, I'm kind of technical, consider myself, dabbling in process development and things like that. So being in an organization where technology is really the core focus, enabling all the really cool things that are out there, and there's so many new cutting edge things that's being deployed and that's evolving all the time, right? So on the sort of your on the back of your logo here, so the whole industry 4.0 thing with
Right.
AI being a real thing that's tangible with the benefits that we see in the market. And there's hardly any system that goes out today without some kind of process or validation process associated with that. So I think the one aspect in terms of being involved in this kind of business is definitely the opportunity to be in front of all the latest developments in parallel processing. All customers are looking at getting the best return on their investments, making their investments last over multiple product life cycles. So there's a lot of challenges with being able to put technology in a very small space. A lot of customers are kind of landlocked with legacy factories, but they need to do kind of more
Mm.
with what they have, right? So that introduces all kinds of interesting solutions. And I think that the business that we are in have very short project life cycles. So from concept development through to seeing a commercial product running 30 to 35 weeks later at a customer site. I mean, that's very exciting to be able to be part of that whole value chain, how all of those things kind of work and come together. And then, the key aspect, which is really in lockstep with the focus here, is to be able to develop organization and team that can run at that speed as well, and that can kind of embrace the pressures that's associated with that, and thinking about all the aspects that needs to be managed within the context of automation. You have many different people types that also have
Right.
to work together across the organization to be able to create the positive outcomes that we see kind of on a day-to-day basis. So I would say the people aspect, the technology aspect, and then just being part of an organization that is keen on investment and growth in different areas and diverse markets as well is very exciting for me.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be, right? And there's so many different moving parts all the time, like you're mentioning, and different processes for each of those things. And, one of the biggest challenges, I think, when you've got an acquisition come up is really having a process for that transfer right? So what, I guess, have you learned in that? Because from my point of view, it's easy to say, like, we have a process for the technology, right? I mean, we can reliably say that the tech is going to perform in a certain way, the same way over a period of time, reliably. People, not so much, right? People are very different.
Yeah. I think it is for sure the biggest challenge on multiple levels, right? So if I kind of take a little bit of a journey that we went on. So the first part was to, in the previous company that was the first acquisition in air, called Totally Automated Systems, we had to develop what I would say since around 2017 a team that could really perform at a higher level. There were multiple changes that we implemented, not only on technology, where we advanced the type of technology that the company designed and developed and built, but really getting the team to operate more in unity from a silo type of perspective to an overall team thing. And there's multiple things that we have done, and I by no means am trying to claim to be an expert on the subject. There are many more people much better published and so on, but I think the principles are throughout very much the same. So a few things that we did is we created a values statement that was kind of overstated, right? So multiple, like 21 kind of leading things that just provided a reference for day-to-day behavior, right? So if you walk around as a senior management inside of an organization and you try and coach people and highlight things all the time, it's really hard to get a cohesive message across. You know, you can have town halls and you can communicate as best as you want. But what we did is we put these things up in the organization. They were visible on the wall. So basically it was like wherever anybody in the organization could move, they were able to see these things that we have on there, right? So be positive.
Mm.
The whole we thing instead of I thing was a big message inside of that. You know, have fun, you know, take responsibility, be proactive, show respect and tolerance, things like that, which was just a kind of a baseline to say this is how we expect people within the organization to behave. And I think that made a big impact in getting the culture changed, where people were kind of nervous. We were doing new things. So in the end of the day, everybody simply wants to be successful, right? But people sometimes feel afraid of what they don't know. So, you know, to able to get them on that journey and make them feel supported and so on, we established that type of thing. And we continued on that. And from a senior management level, we drove that, and it was our responsibility to act like that as well. So that changed behavior from the top down, and from the bottom up. We sort of, you know, people, you're all in this thing, and it's not, you know, it won't just change because we kind of talked about that. Something else that we did, which was kind of cool, I think at least, we implemented a slogan that says "an awesome place to work," and then and we put that up visibly everywhere, right? So, and then the message behind it is, okay, it's not an awesome place to work because management says so. It's everybody's responsibility to make it an awesome place.
You make it
So when
an
you
awesome
are asked
place.
about that, you kind of put people on the spot to explain to the customer or to the next guy or whoever's making a joke when they see that out there, what is this all about? And the intention is really to say, okay, well, with that mindset, you know, a lot of people are either Monday morning quarterbacks or standing on the sideline and tell you how things should be and so on. And we really try to create and nurture an environment to say, well, be what you want this place to be. And in that way, you know, it will truly be that way. And I think that we had some very good success with that. I mean, of course, everything is not like a fairy tale story. There's always ups and downs and things like that, but really kind of set the foundation for that. So that's kind of, I think, one of the major things in the value creation in that organization, so that when it came time for the acquisition to come by, I think a very big driver in that was the culture that we have in the organization. Of course, we implemented very good systems and processes and so on that were robust, right? So it's not like, you know, it's just a bunch of good people type of thing, but we're able to deliver as well. But that took us then into the acquisition as far as the holding company is concerned.
I love that. And I love that you said specifically, the value proposition as an employer, as a company, right, to the people. And, in a world where we're so caught up in the value prop of our products, I think it's easy for a lot of companies to think, like forget there's a value proposition for your employees too. Have you seen any tangible metrics and increase in retention or anything from those efforts?
I would say that we have, from a comparison basis, we have a very high retention level, right? So in terms of tenured people, Totally Automated System is a company that existed for over 40 years, and at one stage of the game, we had like an average tenure of 18 years, right? So from that perspective, people stayed. With the development of the organization, of course, we employed a lot more younger talent, but we don't see a lot of attrition. There is, of course, always one or the other thing that doesn't work out, but that's just the nature of the beast, I would say. But from a cultural point of view and so on, I think that people truly like to work within the organization because we sincerely behave according to the values that I talked about. The management team, and I'll talk about that in a second in terms of the next phase, because I think it's got a different dimension to it in terms of the process that we're engaged in now with the wider expansion. But from that point of view, I would say we have been successful in retaining people. A lot of that is based on the culture that we have within the organization.
I love that.
Yeah, I would say the next phase, once you get into the larger business now. So now we're in the scope of, honeymoon period is gone. Everybody is, excited with all the new business units that's in, but now we need to kind of start working together, right? So the integration portions of it is a key aspect. You nailed it. I mean, technically, you can always talk about how do we integrate CAD systems and so on. But the toughest part is to make teams cooperate and work together and so on. So a couple of aspects in that is to, of course, implement processes to try and standardize work processes and so on, so that from a customer perspective, it can be perceived that you're truly working within one organization. Those things take time. It's much more than just, branding everybody under the same brand. You cannot just start talking about it because, you'll kind of get caught out from that perspective as well. But I would say the process that we engaged in now with the same management team, which I thought, we did a good job in terms of to the point that I described. Of course, now they have to work with colleagues across the ocean and across cultures and things like that, which they were never kind of truly aware of. Within our own business, there's that saying that says, what got you here won't get you there necessarily, right? So from that point of view, it is now a much bigger business. There is an expectation to scale the business and grow it at a very large kind of rate, which means that things need to be done differently. People need to take different levels of responsibility. All of those responsibility aspects needs to be pushed down deeper into the organization to truly create more capacity and work with that. So we were working and utilizing the DISC profile again to make people understand themselves. We were working with a coach from the UK called Sally Ann Smith, and she did an excellent job in the different aspects of the tool that's being used. So not only on an individual level, but it then takes your profile in the context of being an effective leader and telling you, coaching kind of where you have blind spots and what to change and so on. And then what it does, they've got another tool inside of that takes everybody's profile and says, this is what your team looks like. And these could be the blind spots that you have, because you have, of course, introverts, extroverts, people who are thinking a little bit more than talking and so on, but they all have a role and a value to play. And I think that that's a very effective method to help people with a, I don't know what the right, maybe more a theoretical baseline to operate from, right?
Absolutely.
All of these things are still at the end of the day emotional. You have to be able to change and manage your behaviors and things like that. You need to sort of make sure that you understand how you make other people feel, how you communicate, and what you do, and kind of be conscious in terms of modifying your behavior depending on who's in front of you, right? So I think that is the major next step that's needed for this management team to be successful within the larger organization. Because once you've got yourself under control to some extent, it's much easier to lean into kind of bigger things that are out there, and to also feel comfortable within the context of, multicultural things and different processes from other areas.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that is some great insight and great perspective, and definitely something that, should inspire other companies to also, really invest in their talent and their teams, because you want them to move forward and operate at this high level, like you're saying. Was that something that was there anything during this process that you uncovered that maybe you were surprised by with your own leadership style, that you found yourself thinking, oh, maybe, I'm going to have to rethink how I operate in this, or maybe I have a blind spot here?
Yeah, I think that the single biggest realization for me has been, and it comes with scale as well, right? But it's like to apply those principles in a 360-degree perspective, right? So you really have to not only look at the team and what you are developing type of thing, but also how you integrate within the executive team, and making sure that, communication in those directions work efficiently as well, that you're communicating the right things, enough of the right things. I think that there's a lot of people that end up in a situation where they believe, okay, well, the responsibility stops with me. So as long as I deal with the stuff, then it's not so important to sort of waste other people's time with talking about that. But that's not true. It doesn't work
Yeah.
like that. Other people actually want to understand what are the things that you are dealing with. And it may have created a much better thing in terms of their perspective or their ability to try and lean in, or to modify or reprioritize, or, it could create all kinds of spin-off effects of that. And I think that's something from my perspective, it was a big learning experience kind of recently.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'm like famously guilty for like the buck stops with me, and I have to take all the responsibility, and I have to take all the accountability and everything. But you think that's old news. You think that's like kind of like outdated, maybe not something that, maybe we should rethink the way that we think about those things.
Yeah, definitely got an aspect to it.
Interesting. Very cool. Well, Hendrik, one of the big questions that I like to ask leaders like yourself that come on to Workforce 4.0 is what your ideas are around the future of work, and what your visions are for the future of work, as far as the increase of technology and automation, and, balancing that with humans and human potential and capacity. How do we merge these two entities together, and what do you hope is the ultimate outcome of that?
Yeah, I think that, and it's probably an old story, but when you speak to any leader or executive, they'll always tell you that, finding the right people is probably the hardest part of what we do type of thing. And then what we talked about earlier, kind of retention, is of course a key aspect of that as well. But I would say, in today's world, what we see, and employing a lot more younger people with the advent of AI now, and what that enables within the organization in terms of improving efficiencies and effectiveness, and checking. So I would say deploying AI in a constructive way and organized fashion, but really making that core to the operational strategy of businesses, is a key element of success into the future. I think if one can harness the things that are already deployed, developed, and let your people utilize that within the organization, they can do so much more with the time that they have available, right? We all know we have a younger generation that's coming in that are super smart people, so they bring a lot of value to the business, but they also demand a much higher quality of life than maybe the old guard like us have been used to. Well, when I say us, I don't mean you, but in principle. So what people have been used to type of thing in the past, in terms of working hours and so on, people are expecting to have time off now and to be able to do things. So I think that that will be an enabler that would maybe help balance that act a lot. And also for people to work a lot more efficient, across organizational boundaries. So I think that the making that as a core element of strategy and vision is a key path to the future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's a big part of why I started this podcast, right? Is so that we can really talk about, okay, well, technology is enabling the human workforce. It's not going to hinder us. It's only going to make it better for the quality of life for people. What are some tips that you have for leaders that are out there that are looking at AI solutions? I mean, they're everywhere right now.
Yeah.
What are some tips for identifying applications that could drive real change in your organization?
I think that, like you call it out, right? There's a whole smorgasbord of things, right? You can get so lost
Yeah.
in the myriad of stuff, right? So
Yes.
I would say if people utilize the basic tools and just try one of the other things, right? You cannot break anything. So just simply create a GPT for something, right? Some task, and not only the automated task in terms of, okay, provide a response to my email type of thing, but really something that does a market checking for you. What is happening with the stocks and so on, and go and check with that and see what kind of feedback comes out. And I think that will trigger initiatives in terms of, okay, where can I deploy this with the tasks that's kind of at hand, and where I need kind of capacity type of thing. But I would say that there's a lot of people talking about it, and because the landscape is so full of stuff, nobody wants to start with something in case it's not the right thing and so on. And I think I don't want to say, okay, throw all caution overboard, but just try one or the other thing and see what comes out of that. And once you get a feel for it and so on, you'll very easily, I would say, dial it in and stay with your own stuff. Of course, inside organizations, you have the whole corporate governance thing. You have a situation to take care of as far as information sharing and so on is concerned. So do a little bit of homework to make sure that whatever you do work related doesn't get suddenly published out on the web as far as confidential information is concerned. So don't throw
Right.
caution at the wind completely. And then for organizations as well, I mean, if you have an IT department or if you have an organizational piece that can validate and test these things and so on, again, make it a priority so you can kind of put things in the hands of people, because otherwise, it is going to happen. And if you don't provide a solution, people will just go covert and run parallel systems, right? It's just the way it's going to be, because I think there is a sincere interest in people's minds to be able to, let's test it, let's try it, and kind of let's get going.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I love that. Just try it. You can't break it, like you said, but just exercise caution and don't make your things that you wouldn't want public. So that makes a lot of sense. Well, I've got one last deep level question for you, Hendrik, if you've got time for it today. You were talking to the younger generation of the workforce, and they were interested in pursuing a path like maybe the one that you have chosen for your career. What is one piece of career advice that you would pass along to them?
Well, I would say it's linked to the soft skills aspect of whatever we do in business. And that, I would say, is to truly make an effort to understand yourself, right? Like use something like Myers-Briggs or the disc profiling thing or something like that to really try and get an understanding of yourself. And then also that will give you an automatic perspective on all the differences in people around you. Because I truly believe that once you get that perspective, you can then work on building emotional intelligence from a baseline in terms of where you are and so on. And those are the things. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter what you can contribute, on a technical level or any other level and so on. If you're not able to really work together with people and, enhance in a way the lives of those around you, then you will have a kind of a ceiling at some stage of the game for you. So I think that was in my life, I would say, one of the biggest realizations, and it's been hugely successful. And that would be the one thing that I would tell people, make some effort to get to understand that.
What is your disc profile, Hendrik?
I'm a high D.
You're an ID. Oh, very cool. A high D. Oh, I'm so sorry. A high D. Yeah. I'm a high D too. I'm a DC actually. Well, I ask a lot of questions. You can kind of see that.
Yeah.
So I get that. And, you know, you don't mean to come off as abrasive sometimes, as we're D people. So, you
Yeah.
know, for everyone listening out there, we do not need to come off as abrasive as we are.
I have one quick story if you have a minute on that, right? So I
Yes.
have a funky accent that you may have noticed so far, and I have a fairly stoic face, I would say, as well. So in my early career, when I sort of got to a point of promotion, I was sitting in front of the HR VP, guy called Richard Taylor, and he told me, and there was a new business opportunity available for a big job that I really wanted, and he's like, no, I don't think we would want to promote you, but we can't really do that. And I was like, why, what is the issue? And he's like, you have no Velcro. And I was like, what does it mean you have no Velcro? He's like, well, you know, you have no people, there's nothing that people can attach to you because you kind of look so serious all the time. And when you talk, it sounds like you're just angry all the time, right? So you have to be a little bit more vulnerable and create kind of hooks that people can, you know, connect with you. So I think that was a kind of a big realization. Okay, it's okay to be vulnerable, and plus people don't perceive you because I'm like, well, I'm not like that. You know, I think I have a pretty decent, you know, sense of humor even type of thing. So from that point of view, I think that if you understand the things around the whole emotional scenario and how you make people feel, and you have that realization, then you'll be set, you know, in terms of success.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's too, you know, I haven't heard that. Like you don't have any Velcro. I get told that I have RBF often. It's not intentional. It's just my face. And usually it's because I'm like in my head thinking through like a million different things, you know?
Yeah.
And then I'm an introvert on top of that. So what is going on in here never like comes out until it like, oh, this is what we're doing. This is what we need to do. Like there's never ever any explanation though. It's kind of like, here it is. Here's the process. Do this. And then people just look at me like, huh? You know?
No, I can easily see that. I mean, I was in the same trap. It's like you say, you have so many things going through your mind and trying to multitask all the time. That's like there's no space and time for those around you type of thing.
So you do. So I have had to learn, you know, to like slow down and then communicate all of that in my mind. And then usually that helps a lot.
Yeah.
So definitely things, learning lessons of leadership. Absolutely. Well, Hendrik, it has been such a blast having you on the show today. For those that are interested in learning more about what you're doing with AIR, or maybe they want to reach out and connect, what is a good way for them to connect with you?
I think probably the easiest would be to connect through LinkedIn, and I'll pick it up from there. So I'm very open to networking, and I can make a sincere point of that in terms of communicating with people, and especially in the topic of, you know, this coaching, servant leadership type of perspective. It's very close to my heart, and I'm very willing to kind of lean into any of those conversations.
I love that. Thank you so much, Hendrik. I appreciate your time. I will actually in the show notes link your LinkedIn profile as well.
Good.
So those that are out there listening, if you want to connect with Hendrik, he is amazing. You highly recommend having a conversation with him. Absolutely. And get to know him. Always love having again CEOs on the show, but especially ones that are so passionate about servant leadership.
Right. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you all for listening. We will see you next week on another episode of Workforce 4.0.